Welcome to Lassoing Leadership. I'm your host, Jason Rogers.
And I am the other host, Garth Nichols.
Well, we are into it, Garth, deep into season 3. And by my estimation, we're halfway through this season. It's really hard to believe. We've had so many great episodes. We've had great guests, and yet so much to look forward to.
Yeah, because we're starting to consider a season 4. Even though Ted Lasso doesn't go into season 4, we're considering it because we're just having so much fun together, Jason.
It's a fact. It's a fact. And, season 4 probably going to be a little bit different, okay? Given that the series doesn't continue on, and we're not going to rewrite season 4, do you ever wonder what it's going to be like, Garth?
Well, not yet. I mean, the idea of fan fictioning Ted Lasso, I don't know, but I think I think what we need to do is start, interviewing extraordinary leaders from education and beyond, and see how their leadership styles and principles may align or maybe even misalign. So I would recommend, if you're listening to this for the first time, you got to go back and listen to season 1, 2, and 3, because it really sets up a whole bunch of things that our direction for season 4. And we'll start to draw out the principles of Ted Lasso's leadership, but also those of the other characters that we start to see. So we're trying to line this up with some exceptional leaders that we can continue this discussion in lived experiences of people in the real world.
Well, listen, Garth, I'm totally down for that. In fact, today's episode might be the perfect preview of season 4 and what's to come.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. Well, today we have a special guest on our show. Her name is Quinn Simpson. I've had the pleasure of knowing Quinn for nearly a decade now, and I can say that she knows more about coaching than anybody I know. I count her as a friend, mentor, coach, and inspiration. Quinn, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Quinn, do you align your coaching style with Beard, or what sports do you coach, first of all?
I coach 0 sports, but I definitely resonate with athlete-centered coaches like golf, swimming.
There you go.
More than a football team, but
there you go. I'm being a bit facetious here because we know that you're not a coach in that way. But Jason, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, Garth, before we get too carried away, let's talk about Coach Quinn in a little different way. Coach Quinn has dedicated decades to the practice of coaching to help leaders, students, and teachers be their very best selves. So anyways, Quinn, I'm happy that you're here. And if you allow me, I'd like to do just a brief introduction.
Please.
All right. So Quinn Simpson is one of the co-founders of Graydin. Okay, we'll put the link to their site in our show notes. It's an organization working to revolutionize the ways we support, empower, and connect our next generation so that they can thrive at school and at home. Together with more than 300 schools and universities worldwide, Graydin has been at the forefront of the coaching movement since 2011. Quinn has 15 years of experience in coaching, teacher training, and learning content creation for teachers, students, and parents. She is certified coactive coach and NLP coach practitioner. And at the age of 24, she co-founded a small charity called Ecosia. Am I saying that right, Quinn?
Yep, you got it.
All right. That has been in operation for 10 years, using coaching as a facilitation technique in filmmaking projects for underprivileged children and women. With a deep passion to improve well-being in schools, Quinn currently sits on the board of Friendship in Action, a Toronto-based charity that aims to increase emotional and social intelligence in schools, and co-founded the Region Collective and Pause Practice, which are used in Region circles by educators around the world. Quinn, I know I missed some things, but is there anything you'd like to add to that very, very impressive introduction and biography?
So many things. No, I feel like the only thing that resonates for me to add is that I live now in the West End of Toronto. I lived away for 16 years before coming back, and I truly love the opportunity every day that I now have with 2 small children to show them the power of coaching skills at a really young age. They're 2 and 4.5, and getting to coach them every day shows them how coaching's for everyone.
Yeah, it's awesome. And coactive leadership coaching is just amazing. We use it here at Havergal College, and it's really powerful. But listen, I know that you and Jason had a chance to chat about sort of the arc of this podcast. And I understand Jason sort of described it like this. And And I really like this for our listeners too. So season 1 of Lassoing Leadership was almost all about the episodes. We had very few guests, essentially 90% episode, 10% guest. In season 2, we still focused on the episodes, but our guests took a more prominent role. In short, it was about 50-50. And in season 3, we focused on the episodes, but they became the backdrop of our guests having been, our guests taking center stage, 25% show, 75% guests. So in season 4, we are aspiring to have 5% show and 95% guests like you, Quinn. So as you consider this arc, why don't you share with our listeners kind of what occurred to you as you listened to the show?
Well, I love the idea that when you're watching a show or even reading a book, for example, I think reading a book's different because there isn't the like start end of a season, but watching a show, you're in the first season, it's a pure window. Like you're seeing it all and you're just peeking in and noticing things. And then as time goes on, it kind of turns into a bit of a mirror. You start to see yourself in reflection in, and like, let's say that's season 2 and you're more a part of it. And as time goes on, I think it becomes more and more about you and your world than about the show itself. It kind of integrates into your system and then it just stays with you. And I think that happens whether someone is witness to that or not when they're watching a show. And I love how you've designed that in a way through your book.
Yes, we totally intentionally designed it. I'm glad you picked up on that.
And I can't help but think about Seinfeld, the same thing for me. I first watched every episode just for entertainment. Midway, I started to see the same, or, those Seinfeld characters represent themselves in my day-to-day. And finally, as Seinfeld got to episode 9, it started to manifest in everyday life and started to see things through that lens, which was super interesting. So maybe, Garth, this will have legs past season 4. We'll see.
Yeah, and working in a school, it's so interesting to walk around at lunchtime. What are the kids watching on their laptops and their phones, whatever? And it is so interesting to see shows that we grew up with being watched, and people going back to watching Friends, students going back to watching Modern Family. So it becomes part of the culture, the language that they use, the examples that they use. So I love that. But let's get into the content of today's episodes. Quinn, we thought we'd hit you with a few questions and see where they lead us. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right. So let's start at the beginning. We've talked a little bit about your background in coach. Well, Jason gave you that beautiful introduction about coaching and why it's so important generally. But can you talk to us a little bit about how did you come to learn about coaching and why is it so important to you?
So it really does rewind to being a child. And I feel like the best way to describe it is if you can imagine a 7-year-old who is definitely neurodivergent or just different from other children. And I'm standing on the playground and I'm looking around and I'm just like, well, I'm not like them, so I can't go play with them. And I don't feel comfortable over them there, so I can't go play with them. And really not having the skills and tools to describe the experience I was in and not finding the adults supportive of what I was feeling. And I know this because they would say to my mother and my father, like, something's wrong with your daughter. Can you go figure it out? And she's not learning as well as the other children. She's not playing very well. So then I had to go to like all these terrible play therapists and this kind of world of trying to figure Quinn out, when meanwhile I was Quinn. And what I needed was someone to ask me questions about who I am and what I care about. And so then when I kind of like flash forward, I'm like finishing up university and my mother says to me, I really think this coaching thing is for you. Like, I've read this book. It's written by a life coach. And I was like, what's a life coach? And she was like, I don't know, but I kind of think this is what your profession might be. And she bought me coachquinn.com and she was really supportive of me stepping into whatever Coach Quinn was going to become. I didn't know at the time. And then when I read all the books and like went on all the courses, I was like, oh my God, this is what I needed back to 7-year-old Quinn. This is what I was wanting.
Wow, that's super cool, Quinn. It's almost like your mom helped you manifest this life that you're living, which is so cool. I didn't know that part of your story. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, for our listeners' sake, and folks like Garth who don't understand what coaching actually is in your context, just kidding, Garth. I know you know. But can you provide a work? Everyone does it, but Garth has no clue.
He does this every now and then, Quinn.
Just kidding. But Quinn, for everybody who doesn't know it as well as Garth, myself, or you, can you provide a working definition of what coaching is in your context?
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of start with what it's not. And for me, that's like, it's not giving advice. It's not telling someone what to do. It's not setting targets. It's not being like this really smart person who has lots of great ideas. And even in some ways, it's not a thinking partner in the way that people traditionally look at a thinking partner. It's much more about someone who's creating this context for someone to be the best version of themselves, for someone to understand themselves better, like raise their awareness. And the difference between a lot of coaching that I see and what we're bringing into schools and our curriculum is that it starts with heart. It starts with who the person is, their values, their wants, their needs, their motivations, and then goes into the logical linear thinking brain. And a lot of education is the logical linear thinking brain. Like a lot of it is about that piece. And so educators, when they come on our courses, one, they all like to give advice for the most part. And two, they like to use their logical brain. So, and their rational brain, and good for that. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's just, we want to bring more of heart, people finding their own answers, teachers believing in that they have the answers. And, you know, what I like about our coaching model is that it's applicable to a 5-year-old and a 75-year-old, which means it's applicable to an assistant teacher who's, you know, just starting out in grade 5, and it's applicable to a leader at the very, very top of their school, like leading everyone and everything. They can use these skills. And yeah, I think just a lot of coaching gets misunderstood and misrepresented in schools. There isn't really a consistent definition across the world, especially in education, when it comes to coaching. So I feel like we're just trying to navigate that and help people understand it for what it really can be.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned like the coaching model that you use, because I know there are a lot of different models. And I subscribe to what's it called? Box of Crayons. They have a couple of great books, The Coaching Habit and things like that. And it does center around questions, right? So we've got a great definition here going forwards, and I really appreciate that. We know from Ted Lasso too, and our other guests, that coaching is an incredibly impactful leadership style. So Quinn, in your experience, why do you think this is? Why do you think it's so impactful and important?
So I think that I can't speak for all coaching all over the world and all the different forms of it, because I don't think every single one of them can be applied to leadership perfectly. But I think when it's applied in the way that I'm talking about it, and it's heart-centered and person-centered, it works because it's human. Because it's deeply, deeply human. It's following the kind of like natural way of thinking for someone. And so when a leader is using that in their community, it lands because they don't feel like something's being done to them. They feel like they're with that person. And one of the founding fathers of coaching, Sir John Whitmore, who I was very fortunate to become friends with before he passed away in 2017, he got really frustrated with coaching. He got frustrated with the grow model being misunderstood and misrepresented. He got really frustrated with the fact that people were using it in such a rigid way. And he wanted people to see the potential of coaching being like natural learning. Like, how can we learn and help people learn in a really like way that feels good to them? And I think like educational people like John Taylor Gatto and these people who talk about self-knowledge, like we all know when we learn something in our own terms, on our own, in our own way, we feel more empowered. And so I think that's why when you apply that to leadership, and the leader isn't saying like, go, do, must, be. Instead, like all the people around the leader are stepping up saying, go, do, must, be. And then the leader's like, what do you want to do? What excites you about that? And helps them go there and get there.
Yeah, that's great.
Quinn, I wonder, like, I think about university training for teachers or for leaders. It doesn't seem like coaching is focused on maybe at all or enough. And if it's that powerful, like as we've all experienced on this call, why doesn't everybody do it all the time? What's your take on that?
One, it brings tears to my eyes because I have never run a course where I haven't had nearly every single person saying that this is the most useful tool they've ever received, the best PD they've ever had. And they'll be like twice my age, and they will have never been able to experience it. It's not that they couldn't do it, it's just they didn't know to do it. They weren't given the opportunity to learn it. And yeah, why isn't it in universities yet? Well, because universities are running off of an old operating system. You know, they're like, if like the first iPhone or whatever. And I mean, that's nothing against universities. It's just they often are not really keeping up to date with things that are happening in our world because they literally in their mandate to not do that. So yeah, I think that Graydin has spent the last decade trying to find a way to share it and normalize it. Like, your students can do this, your leaders can do this, everyone can do this. So what is the difference between them doing it and not doing it? They have to know how to do it. It's education, it's training, it's providing the space and time for them to be able to do it. Because if they did, they would have a truly different experience in their daily lives.
And I think you mentioned something really important about post-secondary being part of a long system of this linear thinking that exists in education. And in order to make systemic change, we need to actually start with individuals within the systems first. That's one of the things that I think is a great model of or theory of change. So if I were a school leader and I wanted to get my staff, students in school into the coaching mindset to support our systemic change towards this, where would we start?
Well, so if you take the box of crayons, like Michael Bungay, I never say his last, Steiner, I think it's Steiner. You know, I think that like it's a habit, right? He calls it the coaching habit.
Yeah.
So like I would say that using that language is a really important piece. It's a habit, it's a behavior. And so at an individual level, it is the person who is coaching believing that the people around them have all the answers, that they're capable and whole, they don't need to fix them, there's nothing wrong with them. And so their job is to ask, not tell. So it's asking a lot of questions that start with the word what. It's eradicating why from your vocabulary. It's listening to what they're saying and the bigger picture. It's the micro and the macro listening. It's being able to oscillate between the two. It's coaching people, not problems. So somebody has to go through a course to learn that. Like it's a paradigm shift for so many people. It's not just like I'm going to go learn a new thing. So like at first it's a habit and a behavior to change, but it's in a complete philosophical mindset shift. And once you've had that mindset shift at an individual level, our model is that everyone in the school would get trained because one person would be, or four people in some cases in the schools we work in, are training everyone else. So at an organizational level, you can't have coaching embedded into your culture if people don't know how to do it. So then everyone has to know how to do it. So how do you do that? You have to train them in some capacity. You have to make it a part of how you do what you do. So some of the schools we work with, they train their students and their students' parents, and they run it at every single new staff development day. And it becomes a part of how they interview to see if staff are right for the school. Because if you don't know what coaching is, or you don't want to know what coaching is, you don't fit with the culture.
Yeah, and I sort of went, woo, get rid of the question why, because why is one of my favorite questions.
Sorry.
We talk about like start with why and stuff like that, but I do want to, for our listeners, the coaching habit talks about these 7 particular questions, and it's not necessarily that you're not concerned about the why of this person. It's like what's on your mind, follow up with, and then what else? What's a real challenge? What do you want? How can I help? If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? And then what is most useful for you? And I love how you contextualize that by saying the assumption is that everybody is capable and whole to start off with. And so they've examined their why in advance. The other part about this book, and we'll put it in our show notes too, so people can get to it, is this notion of like, talk less, ask more, because your advice is not as good as you think it is.
Yeah.
I love.
And the thing about all of what you just shared, I have no like, irritation with. It's just the problem with some of those questions is actually if they're not asked at the right time,
Yes.
they're not going to make the same impact. And so when I read his book, and I actually chatted to him about, I was like, can we write a book for educators? And he was like, oh, educators can read my book. And I was like, I know, but I actually would love to write a book that's like specifically for them, because personally, as someone that works with educators, I think that there's a missing piece right before those 7 questions begin. And I think that there's a real need to focus on the human and their wants and needs and their values and what they wake up thinking about, all of that juicy stuff that lives more in the heart than in the head. Because if we don't start there, we end up narrowing ourselves from the very beginning. So instead of starting with like smart goals, like starting with specific and measurable and attainable, if only I could meet that person, I would literally ask them to like blip that moment in time. Because when we open to the possibility of more and we start with like, what do you want? What do you really want? Not what do your parents want? Not what do your friends want? Not what is your target or your goal, and not what's on your mind. What do you want? What is possible for you? Then we kind of start to narrow the conversation as time goes on versus right off the bat, which I think is like, that's my irritation with a lot of coaching models and a lot of people using coaching and even as a leadership style. Like, there's nothing more empowering than someone asking you what you think you should do next, or what's possible for you. Yeah. And so once you've done the heart work, that person will be able to answer that question with much more confidence.
Nice.
Now, Quinn, before we jump into the final segment, which is a bit of a rapid fire segment, I have one what question for you that I want you to think about. When coaching is a part of the culture in an organization, what fundamentally changes about the organization?
So I have chills, or like I had a physiological change when you said that or asked that question, because I think what changes is how people feel in their bodies and minds about being in that place. That showing up to that place is one of joy and excitement and honor. No fear, no sense of compliance, no I have to be, but a real sense of I feel safe here, I feel excited here, I want to be here. And that for me has to not come just from the leadership at the top, but the belief that everyone is a leader, that everyone can lead, and we have to be leading in all angles and all shapes and sizes.
Okay, that was awesome. Thank you, Quinn, for that. I'm
Amazing.
glad I asked that what question. So now we got the basics of coaching covered. Our next is a section of this podcast is a rapid fire Q&A. Quinn, are you ready for it? You keyed up?
Ready.
Okay.
We did this a few weeks ago with our guest Danny Bauer. So we've actually borrowed a couple questions from him. We've added a few of our own, but here we go. Okay, question number 1. If you could, stretch it out, Quinn. If you could put a message on all the marquees or all the signs outside of schools, what would it be?
Love yourself.
Awesome. What do you want schools to know about coaching?
That coaching is for everyone.
What's your favorite coaching question?
What else? Which, can I just tell you, I know this is the rapid fire, but it was my boobie's favorite question. It would be like, we'd be on the phone and she'd say, so what else? And then I would say things and then she'd say, so what else? So I feel like she was not a coach, but that question is like permeates in my brain in the best way possible.
Nice.
That might be a good leadership challenge, wouldn't it, Garth? Just to use what else a little bit more often in our practice.
Yeah.
Love it. No pressure here. Quinn, you and I are friends. My favorite character in Ted Lasso is Roy Kent, far and away. It's okay if you disagree, but I have to ask it. Who's your favorite character in Ted Lasso?
I 100% agree. I can't not. Roy Kent, and it was the best because like as someone who lived in the UK for 12 years, his accent isn't one that I actually gravitate towards, but his character's so good I can't not. And I said to my friend, I was like, oh, I love this, I love this show, and she was like, oh, he was in our flat, and I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, do you remember that night where like you didn't want to come out of your room? And I was like, yeah. She's like, he was there. And then I remembered, like, I had a memory kind of jog. And then it was like, I was in my kitchen and Roy Kent was in my kitchen.
Well, if you
2
still have his
degrees
phone
of separation.
I know. And like my friends, they were trying to be set up and stuff. And like, I don't know. But no, I think somebody else ended up going home with him. I don't even know. Anyway, yeah.
2 degrees closer.
Yeah.
Jason, we're getting closer. All right. What is your favorite karaoke song, Quinn?
It is Say It Ain't So by Weezer.
Is it easy to sing? Is that an easy one to sing?
No.
Seems like extraordinarily hard.
I can't sing. So it's like there's no going to be good, whether it's like some easy to sing song or some really terrible to sing song. But I really like that song and I know all the words. So I feel like I could really get into it and be Weezer when I'm up there because I don't need to like look at the screen. So I could just like be like, somebody's tiny. Like I could just like go into that, like, I don't know, just feels good.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, please go back and watch this podcast. Quinn's dancing. It's great. It's great.
All right, Quinn, we've learned so much from you in the last 20 minutes. It's been unbelievable, and we thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Quinn, before you go, though, can you tell listeners where can they find you? How might they work with you?
Please.
Yeah, I think Graydin is the best place, which is graydin.com. And yeah, we've worked with schools all over the world, and we want to work with all of the schools and all of the educators in the world. So please go to graydin.com. That's my advertisement.
There you go. And Quinn, when you work with schools, you work on not just coaching, but do you work on like well-being and those types of issues as well? Or is it just sort of you focus on coaching and that's going to support all the other pieces?
If you think of coaching as like the pelvic floor of the school, I know that sounds a little bit like an odd one. It's very important to a woman to think about that, especially post having 2 babies. But your pelvic floor is what holds it all together. And, we've talked about coaching be like the glue that holds it all together, but really it's, I think the pelvic floor resonates. So then the organs can go on top of it and actually function well, AKA a well-being curriculum, mindfulness, restorative justice. I think those things can go to die in a school without everyone knowing how to coach. So that's why we believe in it so much.
Yeah. And it speaks this idea of you're not going to tell people how to be well. You have to, like you said at the very beginning, I'm Quinn, ask me questions, right? You got to get to know these kids, and coaching is an excellent way of building relationships across the entire school. And also we enjoy anatomical analogies here at
we are open. We're open. And Quinn, I'll disclose this. When we started this podcast, I said to Garth, there are a few people I need to have on the show to be able to do it. You were one of them. So today is a huge highlight for me. I think it was for Garth. And I'd just like to thank you for being here. And thanks to the time you've taken and for all you've given back to so many schools and so many kids and teachers around the world, and the work you continue to do. And this is not the last we've heard of, Quinn. I know you've got a few other creative projects on the go, which are seeking to transform education in other spaces too. So I can't wait to hear more about those. And as always, thanks to our listeners. If you like what you're hearing, tell your friends, subscribe, because we love having Quinn on the show. And, this appearance might just be a stepping off point to getting, bigger and better, whether it's, the Ted Lasso himself, or maybe even Roy Kent, your dinner guest. Quinn, that was a super highlight. So please share the good word.
When you say it like that, like Quinn's had dinner with this guy, we might.
It's in my room. I wish.
Closer to dinner than I've been.
I was in the same kitchen as him. I stood there.
Closer than us. Okay, thanks. Thank you so much, Quinn. This has been great. How about you take us home?
Until next time, keep leading the lasso away.
Thanks,
Right.
Quinn. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Quinn. Thanks, everyone.